basic structure of Hermetics. Your most fundamental training is working with observing the rising and falling away thoughts, sort of the higher part of the mind to separate from the lower part of the mind. You'll notice that when you're observing thoughts arise and observing thoughts fall away, thoughts that are emotionally charged or habitual will have a much stronger tendency for you to engage with. And so your first exercise in Hermetics is teaching you not to engage, to give you freedom of choice. Now, our subconscious mind is just a creature of habit. Whatever thoughts and feelings and behaviours we've engaged in habitually, as a continuous pattern, will just keep arising. And we're not aware that they are arising, we just act them out. So the process of observing thought arise, observing thought fall away, gives you a choice. Do I want to engage in this thought pattern, this emotional pattern, this behaviour pattern? And it's really the basics of mindfulness in Buddhism, this observation. In Buddhism we have 4 foundations of mindfulness: mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, and then mindfulness of phenomena. So your mindfulness of body is really observing the physical, mindfulness of feeling is observing the astral, mindfulness of mind is observing the mental body, and mindfulness of phenomena is observing from the Akasha. Because to observe phenomena, you have to be outside of the phenomena in order to observe it. So it's an Akashic skill. So there's a very, very strong correlation between Buddhist philosophy and Hermetic philosophy. So as we do this exercise, we sit quietly, observe your thoughts come up, observe them fall away. You want to make a mental note to yourself what thoughts are arising, what thoughts are falling away, and what thoughts are strong enough to break that ability to observe, where you find yourself engaging in the thought. You know, oh, okay, I have to disengage and just be a silent observer again. Those thoughts that are strong enough to break your observing skill, write them down after the session, and then contemplate them and inquire into why they're strong enough to do that. You'll find that after a few weeks of this practice, of observing thoughts rising, falling away, it'll become a natural extension of observing your feelings rising, falling away in your day-to-day life. So if you've had emotional outbursts of any type, with emotions of joy or sadness, you'll become self-aware. You'll observe it arise and observe that fall away. You can look at your body and observe bodily actions arise and falling away. So it all really starts with thoughts, of course. The mind needs to engage in a thought in order for it to build an ego substance, an astral substance which can express as a personality. Your personality is basically formed through mind engaging in certain things. Now the environment that you're in will regulate what stimuli your mind encounters and what choices you have to engage in and not engage in. So if you were, let's say, a Buddhist monk living in a temple, you'd have less variety of media to engage in. So your thinking, the way you'd be living, if you're a forest monk, you'd be exposed to the forest, that'd be a stimuli, that's what you'd be engaged in. It would be totally different to a person living in a city, watching TV, movies. The choices of what the mind engages in are totally different. And so living in having a worldly life will generate a lot more challenges for you to release on, but also makes you much stronger because the mind's had a choice to engage in all these things, and you've vibrated your mind above them rather than vibrating your mind into them. And so there's benefit in both. I recommend for people to take time out, do a 10-day retreat in a monastery, and just have that no speech, no talking, just observing rising, falling thoughts for that 10 days, and then go back into worldly life, and then practice that in your normal day-to-day living, and connect those skill sets across. The basic practice is the foundation of everything in the Hermetics text. When you look at any faculty of clairvoyance, you have the methods in the Hermetic text, how to align yourself to clairvoyance. They're fully dependent on the higher observing the lower. The mind can't engage with what it's looking at. If the mind engages with what it's looking at, then it corrupts it. It changes it. It mixes with its own perceptions and ideas, and it takes away the quality of what you're looking at. It removes the truthfulness of it. So every meditation exercise has this incorporated into it in some way, where the higher observes lower, where you observe thoughts arise and fall away, where you attune your mind to an object and you feel what's happening within the object, you feel the energy, you apply psychometry. Maybe looking at the energy field of a tree. If you engage with the tree, you automatically start influencing the tree, and your energy and the tree's energy mixes, and what you see is different. But if you're standing back and observing what's there arise and falling away as a totally separate observer, you can maintain a higher quality of insight into that particular object. And you'll see that this basic skill set will permeate through the whole text. If you don't master this one, it'll be very, very difficult for you to go through the system. The exercises are very, very simple, and you've already got it. Back within the deep part of your mind, you've already mastered every exercise in initiation. Part of you is already there. There's another part of you, within the ego, that has all these other belief structures that is resistant to that. So we have a polarity within the ego. So what we want to do is bring the ego on side and change the self-image to acknowledge that higher part of the mind that can already do all these skills, that yes, this is a natural part of my reality. And as soon as the higher mind, which already has these skills, and then the lower mind, which is ego-based, come into agreement, then the skills just awaken. So a person's training time is dependent on that taking place. That's really the deciding factor of how quickly it takes a person to go from step 1 to step 10 in the Hermetics text. It's the self-image. So the sooner you recognize that, wow, I've already got this, I've already got these skills, I just need to bring ego into recognition, that's it. That's really what we're looking for. Some people will be self-defeating and have an ego mind that, wow, this is really difficult, this takes a long time, this takes years, expose themselves to information that says that, and that becomes their reality, self-fulfilling prophecy. On the other side of the scale, we have people that go, yeah, no, this is a universal truth. The essence of our mind is a vibrational match to the universal mind. That means everything in the initiation text, I've already got that. Now I just want to recognize that I have that, and allow my ego to recognize that I have these skills. I'm just going to awaken. They're lying there in your DNA dormant. Just activate each one, boom, 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 and you've got it. So it's, again, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your view as you enter into this path will dictate your outcomes. So how do we get our view right? Every thought is a tuning fork. It's an vibrational energy. And whatever tuning forks we engage in create an astral substance. That astral energy filters into the ego. And the ego is always right. It always strives to prove itself to be correct. So it will manifest that. And that will become the physical way you express yourself in the world. So by generating a self-image through just an original idea, I'm a master of mindfulness, having that idea and accepting it and looking at what is the tuning fork of mindfulness, what is the tuning fork of observing rising, falling away, and totally aligning yourself with that tuning fork, accepting it as a part of your ego self-image. You've mastered that skill set. Then that skill set has a place within your ego and it manifests itself as a reality. And we want to do this with every single exercise within the Hermetic text. And there's a lot of ways we can do this. One, we can use sigils. Now, sigils are just subconscious symbols that we write down. So let's say we use the term, I am a master of mindfulness, or if you want, I am a master of observing the rising and falling way of thought. You'd write that down, and then you would define it within your meditation journal. You go, I. What is I? I equals the sum total of who and what I am. So I is your physical body, your astral body, your mental body, and your Akashic record. That is the I. That is who you identify yourself as. It's the sum total of your being. And then I am. Am is a state of being. In traditional Hermetic view, the I am is a vibrational match to the universal mind. It is the microcosm, the reflection of the macrocosm. The essence of universal mind is the essence of your mind. So you write that I am equals a vibrational match to the universal mind, or God. You recognize that. And then a master of equals the highest level of skill. You master that skill. And then the skill set itself, mindfulness. You can word it any way that you feel comfortable. You're the creator of this. It's the ability to observe the rising and falling away of thoughts without engaging. So you're not engaging with thought, you're just an observer, a silent observer. So you word that in a way in which you're comfortable. Once you have these things all defined, you simply go into your life force field, build the energy, connect into the consciousness of your life force. That gives you direct access to subconscious layers of your being, and ask a question to your subconscious mind. Give me a symbol which represents this information that's written there. A small sigil. A picture may arise in your mind. You may pick up a pen and just start doodling, and that feels right. Or after you finish the meditation, you may look out the window and see a configuration in the plants. Think, oh, that's it, it'll just stand out. Or you might be staring at the ceiling and there's little dots on the ceiling and all of a sudden they align and make a sigil. Your subconscious will communicate that information to you in a way you're comfortable with. And then you draw that symbol down. You put it in your journal, and that symbol represents that piece of information you're putting down. Then all you have to do is visualize that symbol and put energy into it. As soon as you put energy, draw the life force in, the energy into a symbol, it generates a subconscious link to that energy pattern. That symbol represents mastery of mindfulness. You activate the symbol, your self-image gets charged with mastery of mindfulness. You build a tuning fork in your astral ego which says, I'm a master of mindfulness. That physical skill, that ability to do that, arises within the ego. There's a very, very fast, direct way of accessing that skill set. Now, through the initiation text, we'll cover at least 100 different types of skills. Mindfulness is just one skill. It's a foundation skill. We'll work with elements. We'll work with opening up different psychic abilities, different faculties, mental transference, working with light. Literally well over 100 different types of energy skills. We want to make a sigil for each and every one of them. We want to charge our astral ego to identify itself as a master of all these skills. And as soon as it does, it creates the conditions in our physical environment for that to happen. Now, if we take a string of beads, and this we just engrave that symbol or write that symbol into each bead for each skill set, you can fill up 108 beads with 108 different skills. Maybe you're working one skill set a day for 108 days. You need to revise, reinforce the ego with all these skills, and then you look at your depth of mastery in a practical way in each one. You go into the tuning fork of actual vibrational mastery, and you take your physical skill and you raise it up through practice to the ideal skill which the tuning fork represents. Each day you take your string of beads and you charge it with life force. Fill it with energy, and the more you fill it with energy, the more information is transferred into ego, and your ego gets transferred into that state of being. So this is a very, very basic way of using sigils to implant behaviours into your astral ego and reformat your astral ego to behave in a certain way. Now we can do this with pretty much anything in life. If, let's say, you identify a characteristic in your ego that you don't like, you may be very selfish, self-orientated, and you want to be more generous and cultivate generosity. You use the law of rhythm to look at the polar opposite of selfishness, which is generosity, and you'd swing that rhythm across and you'd generate a sigil which represents a tuning fork of generosity. And then you'd make that part of your cultivation and focus on that frequency. Go through the same process and make that part of your ego.
With something that's a quality rather than a skill set, like generosity, would you still have the statement, I am the master of, or I am the master of?
You word it in any way that you're comfortable. Everyone's ego needs different wording in order for it to be accepted. Simply saying I am a generous person will generate generosity, but how much? There's no scale set to that. We're all generous. Even the most selfish person's a little bit generous. So you've got to be as exact as you can for what's comfortable for you. You're the creator of this. You have to write everything in a way that you are comfortable with. Always written in the context of it's already happened as present moment identity. If anything's written in the future I'm going to be, that never happens because we only exist in the moment. So everything's present moment already manifested. Now, if you look at things as a tuning fork, any thought, any skill, any energy, any profession, it's a vibrational tuning fork. Whatever you're looking at, it's an energy. And it exists in the here and now. And we activate that idea, that tuning fork from the mind, and then enliven it with life force, it builds an astral substance, an ego substance. And then it manifests as part of our expression to the world. The more pure that original idea is within that tuning fork, the more pure the astral substance physical expression will be. So if you generate a very, very clear idea, this is what I want to master. I want to be a master artist, or I want to be a master athlete, or whatever your goal in life is. Be very specific. And you can write pages about it if you need to, about the exact aspect of what you're doing. Clarity is really important. If you're not clear, you end up with a very muddled message to the subconscious. Okay, so this is one of our tools, and we have a lot of tools for reformatting subconscious mind, for reformatting the ego, how we identify. With observing rising falling away thoughts in your day-to-day life, as you practice this meditation, you're going to start observing your own rising and falling away thoughts as you walk down the street. As an observer to this, you can start the process of disengaging the thoughts or engaging the thoughts. You can choose. You may have someone smiles at you on the street, and you notice that you subconsciously smile back without thinking about it, and you see that as a higher observing lower. You've just been given a choice whether you want to continue with that behavior pattern. You may be driving your car and someone beeps the horn at you, and then you see yourself respond in a certain way. You'll have a choice. Do I want to respond in that way again or don't I? And if you don't, you have the choice of cutting it off. Because as a thought, you'll observe this feeling arise before it's expressed. Your mind will generate the ability to observe things come from the root. And as it comes from the root, it comes to the physical body as an expression. And this observing skill allows you to cut the root of things that you don't want. In order for an astral substance to exist within you, it has to be fed. The universe is mind. It has to be fed by mind. So your mind has to engage. Whatever you engage in grows. Whatever you don't engage in falls away. So the mind substance engaging with an emotional cycle pattern will give it more fuel, and it will arise more and more and more. when the mind substance doesn't engage with something where it sees it has a choice and pulls away, it doesn't get any fuel, and then it dies. Everything is dependent on mind substance in order for it to exist. Because when mind substance touches something, life force engages with that touching. When you look at a plant and you smile at a plant, your mind touches the plant, and the life force in the plant increases because your mind touched it. Now, if your mind had negative thoughts, that would be different. The negative thoughts would generate a negative life force, and it would be destructive to the plant. But anything that mind engages with encourages life to exist within mind. That's the way the universe operates. It's mind and life come together. And our astral ego is built on this framework. By tuning into this process, observing how our ego is manifested, how it builds, how these patterns exist, we can make choices. I'm not going to let my mind engage in these patterns, but I will engage in these patterns. And as mind engages in the patterns you want, life force fuels them. If they're very, very pure vibrational tuning forks, they become a part of your ego. So by establishing what your ego is, what you want it to be, very, very important. This is the whole foundation of practice. As your mind learns how to connect to greater amounts of life force and control the elements and move this energy, whatever's within you will amplify if you're not mindful of it. You have to observe the positives and negatives and regulate them very, very, very clearly. And this is a part of purification. The only difference between a positive and negative practicer is that a negative practicer doesn't purify, doesn't release. They just train the energies, recognize everything as emptiness, train stillness, but they're not mindfully releasing. But a positive practicer is in a constant state of purifying and releasing all the negatives. So that generates a safety net. They have no negative to fall into. If they're practicing precepts like in Buddhism, the precepts become the safety net. The qualities of goodness, or the qualities of love, when they fall out of emptiness, they get caught by safety net of love. And that becomes their protection. Where if a practicer is just cultivating emptiness and releasing, but has no safety net, has no precept, has no morals, they'll fall into the negative attributes of the elements. So if a person has an imbalance in the fire pillar, there'll be an overwhelming urge to control others. That they have to control their environment, they have to control their partner, they have to control their students. And their life will be regulated by control when they're not meditating. When they're in meditation, they go into emptiness, they recognize inherent emptiness, but they can't stay there. They fall back into the fire aspect of control. Now if we look at water element, when a person falls into the negative aspect of water element, there's an aspect of lust, lack of morality they'll fall into. So one would be required to make a precept of, okay, this is my line, and I don't cross that line. What is right sexual conduct? When we look at the air element, if people fall into negativity of air, they'll have an overwhelming for intellectual urge, intellectual superiority, or there's a need to intellectually be better than everyone else. They'll need to argue their point, and they'll need admiration from others that they have right view, and you don't have right view. Their idea is better than your idea. And this is a trap of the air element. So it's something to guard against. And even some of the highest practitioners in Buddhism have this overwhelming urge to be right. They have to debate their idea. Say, no, I'm right, you're wrong. It's still a trap. It's still a weakness when they're air pillar. Earth pillar, the aspects to watch out for is greed, the feeling of wanting to possess things, to own things, to create a physical ownership of things around you. That this is mine, I possess this. That negative earth aspect generates a thing within the ego that breaks your unity, breaks oneness. The mind stops recognizing that's a part of everything around them because they want to have ownership of everything around them. So the things you own, you want to have gratitude for them and thankfulness for them. But if you are possessive of them, you don't share them, you don't let them distribute, they become an anchor for the ego. So looking at the positives and the negative elements are really important. When you look at the positive of the fire element, it's your concentration skill. It's your ability to focus your mind, it's your ability to hone into something and hold power within your mind. The power of mindfulness, the power of concentration, all comes from fire. Air element is insight, to be able to look at things without attachment, to have right view about things, to get understanding of universal truth and move from personal truth into universal truth. To be unattached to view, just to see things as they are without engaging in intellectual debate about it. The water cooler has a strong aspect as well, where you recognize everything is an extension of mind, which you are. So everything is you, and you are everything else. There's a natural sense of love that comes out of that. Same as you wash your body, you feed your body, you take care of your body. All living things around you are an extension of that. So the yearning to support and help others increases